Hey everyone, welcome to How to Paint a Mortis Engine Part 3. Here's your paint list. I didn't really like the way the Vallejo smoke pooled, or the way I let it pool up on the top stones, because they kind of have the divots like someone pressed their finger in it, and so it's natural for the wash to want to pool there. So I took earth and decided to airbrush over the top of them and kind of give them uniformity. So that's what we're doing here. I started with the tape and I realized, the sorcerer guy that stands up there is going to be blocking a lot of that stuff, so it's okay. Then a highlight for that airbrush color would be desert yellow, which I'm using here, and kind of centering it. And then when I put the sorcerer guy up on there, I realized that he would be standing that second stair down kind of in the middle, so I decided to hit the sides instead of the middle area. Then we take some brown oil paint and thin it with mineral spirits, apply it with a large brush, and while I was doing the steps here and bringing out the detail in them, I noticed that there was some silver areas that could use a little bit too. And that's, normal in my paint process, where I'm doing one step and I think, hey, this step would also work good on a couple other parts. Now for the little sorcerer guy, I needed to make some stencils. So I took a piece of the blister for a model and a pair of scissors and just started cutting out kind of like finger-shaped rounded edges that I could use and airbrush against them, like you see here. I mean, there's no exact size. You just kind of think of shapes that you'd like to airbrush over and things that would make cool patterns. I tend to like the swooshy, kind of flamey looking stuff, so the rounded edges really help for that. And don't worry about making mistakes during this step, just like I did right there, because when we go over it with red, a lot of this stuff is going to fade away. You can always correct with black paint as well. So if you mess up really bad, wipe it off with your finger, a clean finger, try to get that wet paint off. And then if you want to redo that area, you just load up some black paint in the airbrush, spray that over, and then come back with white again. And now we take Vallejo red ink. This is thinned a bit, so go on light, hit it with a blow dryer, or just let it air dry and then come back and hit it again. If you try to go too thick at once, it's going to get everywhere. And you'll see too, is after this step, it's very glossy, and I hit it with a matte varnish. And so right here, it's matte varnish, and we're doing the highlights. But when we get closer, I think it's at the end of this step, you'll see that if you don't wait for the ink to completely dry and you matte coat over it, it'll create these crackling textures all over it, which really wasn't desired for this. But in the end, it doesn't really show unless you look very close at it. But it can distort details and all that stuff. And that's because since the ink isn't dry, the matte coat, as it dries, it shrinks, and since it's not gripping onto anything because the ink is still wet, there you go, that's the texture. It shrinks and then it cracks and splits. So that's what you're seeing, and the shininess underneath it is the ink. So for sunny skin tone, we did all the highlight areas, the front edges. Now we do the reverse with blue shade, which is one of the Vallejo washes from Game Color, and just spray this where the shadows would be. So if you're doing highlights, you should spray shadows too, so that you get your contrast from both sides. Now we do edge highlighting using a mix of red ink and sunny skin tone. Picture this guy or girl. I don't know if it's a girl or a guy. It could be either. But whatever this person is, I decided that I wanted them to have kind of a dead flesh or sickly looking flesh. So I used heavy khaki, and that pretty much fit the bill. It looked like a darker version of dead flesh. So it worked out perfect. And for the first highlight, we mix dead flesh and heavy khaki 1-to-1. And here you're pretty much gonna highlight everything except for the deepest recesses. So you can go ahead and hit the lower parts of the cheek, things like that, but leave the creases around the nose and the bandanas, and hit the whole finger length on that hand that's sticking out, but leave the recesses that are between the knuckles alone. And then also around the nail beds if you can. Now the second highlight, we're just going to hit the balls of the knuckles and kind of blend down from those big areas. And then here, a little bit less than before, not hitting everything, probably like 50% of everything. And remembering that you got another highlight coming after this, so you want to cover enough area that you have a little bit left over for a bright highlight. And for the final highlight, we do dead flesh and bone white and just 25% of the highlight areas. So this is where your big highlights are going to be, which is, you know, the bottom lip that's hanging out there, the tip of the nose, little dots of light on the cheekbones, maybe the upper lip a little bit, and then little dots of light on the knuckles. All right, I wanted to do the hair white, so if we're going 3 colors up, I thought, okay, let's go with heavy blue gray, which is a really nice gray color. Now the first highlight is a mixture of heavy blue-gray and dead white. And just like before, you can paint the whole thing. Just leave, you're painting 90% of it roughly, and leaving just the recesses alone, the details. And you could do the reverse of this. You could base coat it with this color and then use a wash, but it looks cleaner to me. And then we take dead white just to do the bright highlights. And depending on how shiny you want the hair to be, you can make the highlights smaller and then also add another shadow color if you want it to be like very high contrast, but I figured we'll keep it clean and simple. Alright, now we're going to take heavy brown and we're going to use that to base his staff, sorcerer staff thing, as well as the skull down by his foot and the little pieces of paper that are attached to his cloak. Our first highlight will be bone white and heavy brown mixed 1:1. For the wood here, I just kind of wanted to stipple, like, I didn't want to cover everything. I wanted to paint some kind of a texture on it just so it looked like wood. And I'd never done this before, especially like on a staff and stuff. I've done like lines and things like that, but I wanted it to look a certain way. I had this picture in my head of what it would look like with washes and everything on it. So this is me just trying it out while doing a tutorial. Alright, now we do another highlight of bone white. Oh, and why I started this part of the process, I was looking at the little cloth that goes over the sorcerer's eyes, and I couldn't figure out exactly what color I wanted to do. I didn't want to do black, and I didn't want to do brown, and I had the bone white out, and I said, yeah, I guess it could look like it's some kind of cloth or whatever. And also, let's hit the fingernails, and I kind of dry brush the inside of the mouth just to bring out some kind of detail. And then we use dead white. The little key ring as well as the chain are painted using Vallejo steel and a little bit of black mixed in. It's not gun, but it's really close. Then we base coat the keys gold. The skin was kind of bugging me, so I decided to grab red shade and kind of glaze in some shadows. Just those areas that we initially left alone, the creases and things like that. We're just putting this in there, and the wash is really nice for that. The thing is, though, is you have to be very careful about letting it dry. Like, you put on a good wet coat right into the shadows and stuff that you need, and you need to leave it alone. Like, let it dry or blow dry it. Depending on how thick you put it on, it'll dry faster or slower. And if you can just push it into the shadows, it has a really nice effect. Just to give the skin a different color, brings it to life. Then I thought, hey, let's go ahead and add like blood to the bandana thing over the eyes. Then we're gonna add some washes over the papers and the skull, just to kind of change the colors. And even though the wood was highlighted using the same colors and stuff, just using the different color washes and change the overall look of it, just because it kind of filters, since it's transparent, filters it and changes the what the underlying colors look like. Now for the wood, I'm going to use umber shade, and you can see like how it changes the wood. It's not very drastic of a change. So I basically put on a layer, get it to where I like it, where it's not super pulled up. Then I pull it out of camera, blow dry it until it looks dry. Then I come on with another layer, and I put some on the chain and, you know, kind of dab it here and there. But this is how you work the color up or down, I guess, if we're working on the shadow. There we go, blow drying again. And then come back, take a look at it, and nope, want a little bit darker, so we put some more of that in the shadow areas. It's always pushing it towards the shadow area. Now is the almost final step. It's the final step for the tutorial, which is black lining. And this, I don't know, you guys have seen my last couple videos, and I love doing the black lining. And this brush that I'm using is I forget what it's called. It's like the tiger's eye something liner. I'm gonna put a link for Amazon down below. But for lining, I love it. It takes a little getting used to, but it's pretty awesome for doing long, steady lines. The longer the bristles are, it creates like a shock absorber for the miniature, like, hand movements that you make. Like if you're a little shaky, things like that, it's like a spring in the middle. It's awesome, and I like it. But pretty much after this part, when you're done lining it, this is when you would varnish it as soon as this paint's dry. You're done doing your lining. But I like this more than doing the full-on oil wash, because if your prep work, especially on the cloak, we had all those little cracks and stuff just from a mistake that I did in one of the steps. If you do an oil wash over that, that'd be a nightmare to clean up. that's it for this. There's more pictures on the Shattered Vision site, and I'll see you next time.